as we roll through some of this, I'll read it off for the iTunes and Spotify family out there. The Astros up at the top. I mean, no surprise, right? 95.5, the Yankees 94.5. I tried to grab like the best number I could see in the prop shop. Some of these may have changed just slightly, but Blue Jays 90.5, the Rays 88.5. So right off the hop, I mean, the top 4 teams here in the AL, 3 of them from the AL East. The Mariners 87.5. I think that you and I chatted about the Mariners a lot heading into last season as the the up and coming squad with a lot of their young bucks, and they certainly made some noise last year. Cleveland at 86.5, the White Sox at 83.5, the Rangers, Jacob deGrom, right? They spent some money. They've spent a lot of money over the past couple of seasons. Minnesota Twins, 81.5. Carlos Correa back with the Twins after all. I loved the MLB show, the cover that they made. I know it wasn't real, but it was like Carlos Correa on the Twins, on the Mets, and on the Giants. The Angels at 80.5 every year are at 80.5. 77.5, the Red Sox, the Orioles at 76.5, the Tigers 69.5, KC 68.5, the A's 60.5. I tend to hammer like unders on brutal baseball teams, and I know 60.5 is pretty low, but I feel like it's going to be a long year again for Oakland. I personally have a lean to the over on Seattle again. I think that they're, a 90-win team. I like their rotation. I still like their bullpen. Obviously the kids, made some noise. They got Teoscar Hernandez on the squad there now. I do like Seattle. I can't get behind those. Like I can't take overs on the mid 90s. But when you look at this board, what do you see? Is there anything that really jumps out at you? Or are the Rangers going to be a good baseball team this year? On paper, they're good, but that's on paper.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of with you here. Nothing really jumps out. Obviously, we do have a few rule changes this year, and one of them is the change in schedule. So teams are going to be facing less divisional opponents, which should be good news for the AL East teams.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I'm on the fence. I think I would lean under on that Rangers just because of their lineup, especially the bottom half of it. But their rotation looks great. I don't really know what to expect from their bullpen at this point. Oakland, I definitely wouldn't bet that over. The only thing that would make me feel more comfortable about the under is if they had some more major league assets that they would probably look to trade, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. And I do like your Mariners look. They got Castillo at the end of last season. They got Teoscar in the offseason. So I do think they are better than they were just to start last year. So I would definitely lean over there. And man, I'm a sucker for the Twins. I think I would go over that 81.5 there as well.
And the division is still not great, right? For like, you see the teams here, like Cleveland 86.5, Chicago 83.5, and then you got the Twins, and then you got the Tigers and the Royals. I know that you brought up a good point, right? You're not going to have as many divisional games. Halo fans, you're not going to have to play the Astros 17 times and watch them lose 15 times and get spanked, by like 7+ runs in half of those games. So it's good you're going to play some other teams here, but still with Minnesota, like that division is definitely up for grabs. Bringing back Carlos Correa. I feel you there. I like their lineup a little bit, but I really like this Mariners rotation. You mentioned Castillo, man. He was fantastic. He was such a great get for Seattle. Logan Gilbert, Robbie Ray, George Kirby, even Marco Gonzalez. Like, he's not a great fantasy pitcher. He's a better real life pitcher. He pitches to contact, but he keeps the ball on the ground for the most part. He's not a bad 5. He has some like decent games here and there, but the bullpen is still pretty solid as well with Seattle. And I do like their lineup. There's definitely some holes. I see Colton Wong is now a Mariner. Eugenio Suarez had a decent bounce back. Never going to give you a great average, but Julio Rodriguez obviously is the engine, and that kid's a stud. So I think we're on the same page with some of these totals. Let's I think that's it. Like Texas. So you don't feel like the over 82, you would lean with the under. So you don't think that they're a playoff team?
I definitely don't think that they're a playoff team. I mean, it's tough to say at this point. Like, if you can tell me how many innings we're going to get out of DeGrom, then yeah, I can more accurately tell you if they're going to be a playoff team or not. But I do really like their rotation, even though there are a handful of guys with injury concerns in there. But at this point, no, I would probably bet against them making the playoffs. And I'm curious to see what that number is at. I think that might be a bet I'd prefer instead of betting the under on their team total, if it's anywhere near like -130, -135 or something like that, to not miss the playoffs.
Is there any surprises? I feel like they're a little overrated as well. Texas, like I wouldn't be shocked if the under with Texas and LA both hit. Like, are there any surprises here? Like, I know it's early and we're just getting a good feel and we're just looking at it. If we're like circling playoff teams here, I would circle the Astros, the Yankees, the Bluebirds. I would go with Seattle in here. And I know we're going to dive into the. Maybe we just save it. AL East is who would be your playoff teams as of right now?
I mean, literally everyone you just named: the Astros, the Yankees, the Blue Jays. I like what Toronto's done this year. They didn't, we saw them in years past try to, win the offseason championship and sign every single big name, and that's not what they did this offseason. They kind of, worked on the bullpen, worked on the outfield defense, and just kind of tried to round out the roster a little bit better than it has been in the years past. Now, I still don't like having Kikuchi as their number 5 starter, but I do think they're a really good team, and so I do like them to, along with the Yankees, to come out of the AL East and make the playoffs there. I think one of the surprises, and maybe not necessarily something that I'm that surprised about, but people seeing the Red Sox and the Orioles projections so close. And yes, I've been ragging on the Red Sox all off season. It's been like one of the worst off seasons possible for them. But I do think their bullpen is really good. I think they made some really nice moves in the pen, and the rotation is solid. I just don't really know how it's going to shake out with the injury concerns and just like the limited innings all of those guys seem to have. I think it would be ideal if they went to, piggyback 2 or 3 of those starters together, but I doubt they do that. So I'm just curious to see how that rotation really shakes out.
I would say and we'll get into the Rays in a little bit. It's like always a team that a lot of people count out at the end of the day. They just always seem to be there, battling in October. But I would say, Quan, if we bring that board back up, I mean, those teams that we talked about with the Astros, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Mariners, there's 4 right there. You're going to have a division winner, of course, in the Central. I probably have a lean to Cleveland, but I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I really do feel like that's up for grabs, the White Sox and the Twins. And I don't think any 3 of those teams will get that other wild card spot. And then we'd see maybe either the Rays or, your O's really push as well. And maybe the Angels and Texas kind of, hang around. But I would say playoff teams, Astros, Yankees, Blue Jays, and Mariners for sure. And then Quan tells us the Rangers minus 250 not to make the playoffs, plus 200 to make the playoffs. But a lot does have to go well, man. Like DeGrom's, like 30 starts in the last 3 years. Like, he's the best pitcher when he's playing, but there's a lot of risk in that contract, man.
Right. And then if you look at their lineup as well, they have Adolis Garcia projected to hit cleanup right now. Jonah Heim bat 5th. I mean, their bottom half of the order is pretty abysmal. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you in the Central. It's kind of hard to pick one of those clubs. You love the Guardians pitching, like their rotation and their bullpen's both going to be great. We'll see if the White Sox improve by just getting rid of Tony La Russa. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets them a couple more wins. But yeah, I definitely like those 2 clubs over the Rangers.
Tony La Russa in the dugout, half asleep
in the first inning, man.
Yeah, like is in the first inning and this guy's asleep. I would say yes. Getting rid of him for sure. That I'm a sucker for the White Sox, but they tend to disappoint. But they bring in Benintendi. Still got Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. If those 2 guys can stay healthy this year, Robert and Jimenez, like they have to stay healthy. Maybe a little bit more from Andrew Vaughn. And then, we did see some decent things from Lynn in the second half. Giolito had a bit of a step back. I do like their rotation. Clevenger's a bit of a wild card. Kopech could be okay for them as well. So I am a sucker for the White Sox. A lot of people know that. I tend to take their overs, especially when they play lefties. Let's switch over to the NL. We have the Dodgers up at the top, 95.5. The Braves at 94.5. The Mets also at 94.5. The Padres at 92.5. They made some noise in the offseason. Now Xander, a member of San Diego. The Cardinals 88.5, as well as the Phillies 80.5. There's seems like there's some better teams here, right? In the National League, there's a lot of teams at 88.5 and over compared to what we just saw in the American League. The Brewers at 85.5, the Cubbies at 83. The Giants, San Fran at 81.5, Miami at 74.5, as well as the Diamondbacks, and then just a lot of just garbage. Pirates 67.5, Cincy 65, Colorado 65, and then the Nats 61.5. You and I chatted before. I think we've had the conversation in the Discord. It's very active already, guys. Baseball is still like a couple months away, but we're dropping bets in there nonstop and things that we like. And I think the entire FTN crew is on the under in Colorado. It's 65.5. I don't even know if that's live. It may be like 63.5 now, Drew.
I see. I think I was just looking at the FTN prop shop before we went on. And I think I saw a 67 for Colorado. I'm not sure where it was, but honestly, that's one number. And, we were just talking about this, these numbers haven't been out for very long. We've already seen a decent amount of movement. And that was really out of all the win totals, both in the AL and the NL. I really think I saw Colorado around 69 at first. That's the only one that really jumped out at me. And I would really look at that under. At 65. It's a pass. At 67.5. I'm probably passing there. I think that'll be just a little closer. And the Nationals way down there at the bottom, I've seen them as low as 59. Now, I wouldn't go under the 59. Anything in the 60s, I would kind of lean under, just because, their team is a mess. One of the worst lineups you'll see, and a bunch of question marks in the rotation as well. As far as overs go here, I would lean over on Atlanta. Don't really want to touch the Dodgers. They just lost so much major league talent in the offseason. Now, they were the deepest team in the game last year, so it shouldn't hurt them that much. But I just think that'd be a little tough to bet on them to win 96 or more.
I love the Brave squad. How could you not, right? I love the rotation. I love the bats, the young bats. They just have been doing it right, man, with some of these kids, and they're signing up to like all these friendly contracts. I really like Atlanta. I do think that they're the team to beat in the NL. And Quan tells us that 67.5 bet MGM minus 110 over and under. I lean to the under, man. They won 68 games last year. Cincinnati won 62, Pittsburgh won 62, and the Nats won 55, and they had Soto on their squad for quite some time, right? Like, yikes. Daily Handle says Giants over Dream 81.5. What do you make of the Giants? They're always a hard team for me to figure out. It's like every other year they're good.
It's like, it sounds like someone else knows one of my weaknesses. I like the Giants rotation a lot. Webb, Cobb, Manea, Stripling, Wood, like maybe a bunch of underappreciated guys, but I'm a big fan of the rotation. It's really hard to project how well you think they're going to do when you look at their lineup, though, right? Especially like I thought Correa was the perfect move for them. It obviously didn't work out, but they're such a platoon heavy team that like when you look at their lineup, you're like, yep, this is not very good. Like I don't think they're going to hit that well, and then they always kind of seem to surprise you. I would lean over to the Giants, but nothing really strong there.
They got Haniger in their lineup this year, Michael Conforto in their lineup this year. I'm with you on the rotation. I think you're a bigger Alex Cobb guy than I am.
That's my guy.
He's your guy, but Logan Webb is a stud. Shamanaya, right? He's shown some really good things. He's just lives in Cali. Like Oakland, San Diego, San Fran. So like it's a good pitcher's ballpark. We know what the organization has done with some of these arms as well, right? So they could maybe turn him around. Ross Strupling's in the rotation. Alex Wood again. So I do like the rotation. I actually think it's pretty underrated.
I thought it was pretty funny. It's like how does Mitch Haniger and Michael Conforto pass a physical, and then you can't get Correa to pass one. But yeah, the rotation should be good. And actually, I read an article on Manea. He was actually a little disappointed in himself. Since the trade to San Diego last year, he just thought it was like a big adjustment for himself, and he didn't think he handled it as well. So he's a lot more prepared this year is what he's saying. But I think it's a great fit, and they'll probably try to, I think they'll do a good job of unlocking his talent a little bit more than the Padres were able to.
Speaking of the Padres, what do you make of them? Are they overrated, or like every year their totals in around here? Of course, like Tatis is going to miss some time, but when he's in that lineup, man, is there a better four? Like Tatis, Soto, Machado, and Xander? That's a pretty solid four, man.
Definitely not a better four than that. Really, what I'm afraid of with the Padres is the back end of their rotation, right? They're going to have Nick Martinez starting this year, and it looks like Seth Lugo is going to be their 5. He's a guy that I'm a big fan of. He's an elite relief pitcher. There's no doubt about that, but he's had injury concerns, and to have him penciled in as your 5 right now makes me a little bit nervous, especially when there's not that much depth behind him. So I really think like the Padres need to go out and sign like even like a Michael Wacha, just someone that they can count on to get a minimum of 150 innings. So the rotation makes me a little nervous, but yeah, I don't think there's a better 4 in baseball.
80-game suspension for Tatis, eligible to return April 20th. So he won't miss too much time, but that was pretty surprising, right? When we did hear that news and they just got Soto. So we haven't really seen the whole band together. Josh Hader, if you remember, a big acquisition for them towards the end of last year as well.
And then we also saw them sign, Nelson Cruz. I know he's like 43 years old, but he had his LASIK surgery. He said he can actually see the ball now.
Oh, baby.
Have Cruz as your 7 hitter, like that's a
pretty good
lineup, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. He can fill in if there's any injuries. He can move up and down the lineup. He's still like a guy that I would check a lot of boxes if know DFS if you're playing a lefty. He's still got some power for sure. And the eye surgery stuff has helped out athletes before in the past. We've seen it before in the past. He's still he's like fine wine with that guy, man. Like I'd say he could hit 20 bombs. I wouldn't be shocked if he hit 20 bombs this year.
I wouldn't either. And you look at what last year he was projected, or he was hitting like 3 and 4 in the Nationals lineup, at least to start the year. I mean, like you said, to have him at the bottom of your order, right? I mean, Matt Carpenter and Nelson Cruz as your 7 and 8, like you could do a lot worse than that.
Yeah, that is pretty solid. I kind of overlooked that. And Jake Cronenworth is a player I like as well. The lineup is good. The questions, I think, which you brought up, right? The back end of that rotation and some of those guys, if they can stay healthy, Blake Snell, if he can stay healthy, Musgrove, Darvish, it's a good 1, 2, 3, but health is certainly going to be a big concern there as well. All right, giddy up. I kind of like the under on some of those brutal teams, though. I don't know. Again, which team is the best out of those? Is it the Pirates just because some of their young kids are starting to get into the system now? I mean, the Nationals, of course, are not going to compete. They're the worst of the 4, but who would you say has the better season, Pittsburgh or Cincinnati? It got to be the Pirates, right?
My question with Pittsburgh, and I feel like we've been asking ourselves this for the last 2 years now, is are they actually going to trade Reynolds? If they do trade him, then I would easily say that the Reds in this instance. But if they keep him, like you said, man, they have a bunch of young kids. Their lineup isn't bad. Obviously, I'm not buying into the Mitch Keller hype like folks do every year, but I definitely like Roansy. And I mean, they got Rich Hill. Their rotation isn't bad. As far as the Reds go, I really like their big 3 pitchers.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, Ashcraft, not as much as the other 2 guys, but I mean, it's really hard not to be in on Lodolo and Green at this point. You really don't know what you're going to get out of that lineup. It is a tiny ballpark. But yeah, I think it's between those 2. And if you told me that the Pirates wouldn't be making that trade, then I would go Pittsburgh here.
There's no question the rotation. I'm a huge fan of Lodolo. I'm looking at Fangraphs, the projections for him and Green. They're both sub 4 ERA, 194 strikeouts in 156 innings for Green, and for Lodolo, 189 in 160. They both have tremendous pitches. Arsenal through the roof, right? They got a lot of swing and miss in their repertoire for sure. So I'm a big fan of both of those guys. But yeah, there's still a lot. There's gonna be some growing pains certainly this year again for Pittsburgh and Cincinnati fans.